For the game Saturday in general, I want you to talk on the Michigan side. Obviously, it's why you're here. I'll say in a 2 bullet point fashion for Michigan State. 2 concerns generally. Our secondary, shaky. I don't think you can exploit it, not to the extent that a lot of teams could. The other one, though, grave concern, the Michigan State offensive line. I don't know which of the 11 guys that play you want me to talk about. It's like we're the only team I've ever seen that does like a full line change.
Is this a Matt Patricia guard rotation situation?
Times 3. Like it's like, you look up at your screen. I'm like, 72's gone. Did he hurt? Is he hurt? It's like, oh, wait a minute. It's 5 new guys out there. It's like the line change. It's like D2, the Mighty Ducks, change it up, and 5 new guys come on. I've never seen anything like it. So but either way, it's not the worst offensive line I've ever seen, but it's been shaky. Michigan gets after you. I mean, I do not want to get into the Panasiuk Hutchinson thing.
Well, let's do it.
I don't want to. Why would I want to do that? It's damning to my Michigan State case. So why would I want to go there? I don't want to do the Mike Vladdy thing where I'm like, somehow, I don't know where he's getting these numbers. He's just making up stuff about Panasiuk, or he read the wrong Twitter feed. I don't know where that came from, but Hutchinson's better, and I love Panasiuk. I think if I had to take one, the NFL evaluation I think bears that out too. But Michigan State,
really good college pass rushers.
I love them both. But Hutchinson's better. I'm sorry, I know that you talk about angry tweets. I'm going to get yelled at, but it's like you got to keep some level of objectivity here. You got Spartans all over the place. Got to bring something.
Did I do that?
Yeah, well, you do a lot of stuff, but we get shit all the time, you and I. It's because I think we're honest. I think we try to be, but that's the whole, the secondary thing. I don't think, for one, I think we have a great safety in Xavier Henderson. So that helps, but our corners, shaky, but I don't think you're equipped to exploit it. The offensive line being shaky, you're uniquely equipped to exploit it. That's my concern. The Michigan side. Where do you feel Michigan is vulnerable? Where should they have concerns like I do about our offensive line in particular?
It's really weird because outside of Peyton Thorne and Kenneth Walker, and the wide receivers are really good too. Super athletic. We saw what happened last year. Michigan got Rocky Lombardied. I feel like outside of those things, and that's a lot. I mean, I just named half your offense, but these two teams are literally like the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other, like incarnate, because I'm concerned about Michigan's cornerbacks, defensive backs. I thought last year they got completely exploited and played 2 of the worst. I mean, between Vincent Gray and Jamon Green, probably the 2 worst games they've played, period. Now, to their credit, that was the only, in a terrible season, that was really the only position group that got better as the year went on. And I think they played pretty well. I think they've held up pretty well so far this year. Now, they haven't seen the wide receivers like they will against Michigan State, and certainly, I mean, just look down the road, Jahan Dotson, Penn State, Raheem Jarrett, Maryland, literally everything Ohio State has. So cornerback would be a position of concern for me. I think I would also maybe go to the offensive line in that I think Michigan's offensive line got off to a much quicker start than I expected them to this year. But what we've seen the last couple of weeks, I mean, I just joked about the guard rotation, and this wasn't a rotation. This is injuries and things like that. They played 5 guards at Nebraska. I think they played 3 or 4 last week. Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinner have been pretty good, but they haven't been on the field in a couple of weeks. So, I look at that. Andrew Vistardis has held up really well at center, but I think that pressure up the middle and how Michigan handles that is going to be a big thing. Like, it's so cliche to say, but you look at this game really does boil down to what happens up front on both sides of the ball for both of these teams. I can't say forget Aiden Hutchinson, but assuming he's the type of guy that gets all that type of attention, and we can split hairs about if he's being held a ton or not. That always happens, but it's not a big deal. They got a guy on the other side in David Ojabo who's coming on. Like, I feel like I watched a game against Northwestern, and every play is either being made by Hutchinson or Ojabo, who's super raw coming into the year, or really coming into Michigan. And as this year's gone on, I mean, he's starting to creep up that. I don't think that Pro Football Focus is the be all end all, but you look at player grades and player rankings, and he's been a guy that's ascending too. So I really do look at. I think it's Michigan's cornerbacks. It's the interior offensive line play. And then again, can those wide receivers get open down the field? That's because I do think, I mean, Henderson, again, it's another one of those things. Xavier Henderson, NFL guy. Daxton Hill, NFL guy. So again, both teams pointing at each other with what they can bring to the table on both sides of the ball. I feel like what's going to turn this game is who wins up front. And it's cliche to say, but that's where I see this game. It starts and ends there for me. And then you work backward and see what happens. If Michigan's offensive line can give McNamara time to throw or give Michigan's wide receivers a little more time to get open downfield. And also, I do think at times Michigan has, when I talk about how Josh Gaddis gets into a rhythm, at times they've developed a nice little quick passing game. I think the first half against Rutgers, I think, is probably the best that's looked this year. I'd like to see some of that come back because, like I said, you get the ball out quick, and Michigan State has a good defensive line and good pass rushers too. Like, it offsets that. The other thing I would say, concern-wise, Northwestern is hardly Ohio State on the offensive side of the ball. And they screened the holy hell out of Michigan last week and were able to pop off quite a few big plays. That's a concern for me. So for me, it's those things I mentioned and just discipline on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Josh Ross, I think, has been a stabilizing presence for them at inside linebacker, but has a tendency to overrun plays, has a tendency to get sucked up on fakes and things like that. No, the idea that Michigan State could get him to bite on play action is, again, that's a scary thing if you're a Michigan fan. So I think a lot of what the concerns and the strengths are for both of these teams are similar. It really, I truly believe this is probably the most evenly matched Michigan State game I've ever seen.